I want to show you two facts that shouldn't be able to exist in the same city. Fact 1. Over the last few years, Chicago has lost Boeing. It lost Caterpillar. It lost Citadel, one of the most profitable hedge funds on earth, to Miami. It lost Tyson Foods. It lost TTX. It lost Peak 6 to Austin. Walgreens pulled its people out of downtown, and a company that had been in Chicago since 1948, True Value, just announced it's moving to Indiana. Fact 2. In the same window, corporate real estate trackers named Chicago one of the top destinations in the entire country for companies relocating their headquarters. Both of those are true, at the same time, in the same city, and every take you've heard about Chicago picks one of those facts and pretends the other one doesn't exist. If you want the city to be failing, you list the departures. If you want it to be thriving, you cite the arrivals. Neither one is lying exactly, but both of them are hiding the thing that actually matters, which is not how many companies are moving, but what kind are moving, and in which direction. That's what I want to walk through because once you see the pattern in the trade, you can't unsee it. Quick thing first, if you'd rather have the full picture than the convenient half of it, hit subscribe. That's the entire premise of this channel. Alright, let's dig in. Let's put both columns on the table because I'm not going to sell you one side of a ledger. The departures are real and they're heavy. Boeing left for Arlington, Virginia. Caterpillar went to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Citadel, Ken Griffin's firm, moved to Miami, and Griffin moved himself with it. Tyson Foods shut its downtown Chicago office and pulled everything back to Arkansas. TTX went to North Carolina. Peak 6 Investments moved its global headquarters to Austin. SC Johnson is pulling roughly 170 employees out of downtown Chicago and up to Wisconsin. Walgreens is vacating its downtown space and moving people to the suburbs. Beam Suntory left for New York, and now True Value, after 78 years, is heading to Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's a brutal list. Say it out loud and it sounds like a city in freefall. Now the other column, which almost nobody reads. Dover Corporation moved its corporate headquarters to the Chicago area from New York City. GE Healthcare planted its global headquarters in Chicago and consolidated major operations there. Nautilus Solar Energy announced a headquarters move to Chicago. Bally's is building an integrated resort and casino in River West. Conagra chose Chicago for its global headquarters, and the relocation data has Chicago sitting near the top of the list of metros gaining headquarters. So, which is it? Is Chicago a corpse or a magnet? The answer is that it's neither, and the question itself is wrong, because a city isn't a scoreboard where you subtract departures from arrivals and read the number. What matters is what's on each side of that trade. Here's the pattern once you line them up. Look at what's leaving. Boeing, a global aerospace giant. Caterpillar, a manufacturing icon. Citadel, enormous concentrated wealth and financial power. These are marquee names, household names, companies whose presence conferred status on the city, whose executives sat on boards, whose money funded museums and hospitals and campaigns. When they go, the city loses gravity, the thing that makes a place the obvious answer to where should we be. Now look at a lot of what's arriving. Solid companies, real jobs, genuine investment, but often quieter operations. Regional consolidations, corporate offices, businesses shifting from an even more expensive market like New York into a cheaper big city with great infrastructure. That's the trade. Chicago is losing crown jewels and gaining solid tenants. And on a spreadsheet, that can look like a wash. One headquarters out, one headquarters in, even. But those two things are not the same asset. Losing Citadel and gaining a solid corporate office are both one headquarters. They are not both the same amount of tax revenue, civic weight, philanthropic money, or pull on the next company deciding where to land. So the city can post decent relocation numbers and still be quietly getting poorer in the ways that are hardest to measure. That's why both narratives feel true to the people arguing them. The optimists are counting transactions. The pessimists are counting weight. Only one of those shows up in a press release. Now here's the part that genuinely surprised me, and it's the part the doom crowd never accounts for. Chicago keeps pulling companies in despite Illinois having one of the heavier tax burdens in the country. That shouldn't happen if taxes were the only thing that mattered. Something is outweighing the tax bill for a meaningful number of firms. And it's not a mystery. It's the stuff Chicago has that almost nowhere else does. O'Hare, one of the most connected airports on the planet, which matters enormously if your executives fly constantly. An actual regional rail system. A deep, genuinely diverse labor pool that isn't dependent on one industry, so you can hire finance people and engineers and logistics people and marketers in the same city. Universities feeding talent in continuously. Office space that costs a fraction of Manhattan or the Bay Area. And a downtown that, whatever its problems, is a real global city, not a business park with a skyline. Look at Dover. It moved from New York City to the Chicago area. That's a company that ran the numbers and decided Chicago was the better deal, not compared to Texas, but compared to Manhattan. And that's the thing people miss when they treat this as one national migration to the Sun Belt. There isn't one race. There are several, running at once, and Chicago is losing some of them while winning others. It loses to Dallas and Miami on taxes and cost. It wins against New York and San Francisco on cost while keeping big city infrastructure. That's a real position. It's just not a comfortable one, because the companies you lose in that trade tend to be worth more than the ones you win. Let me pull this down to street level because headquarters relocation announcements is the most bloodless phrase in the English language, and there are real people underneath it. Think about somebody who spent 18 years working in a downtown Chicago tower. Not an executive, an operations manager, or someone in finance or IT. Their whole professional world is a few blocks wide, the lunch spot they've gone to for a decade, the train they know by heart, their kid's school picked because of that commute. When the marquee company leaves, that person usually doesn't get a dramatic firing. They get an announcement, then months of uncertainty, then a choice that isn't really a choice. Relocate to a city you didn't pick, or find something new here. And when a new company arrives to replace it, that's genuinely good for the city. But it's not automatically good for that person. Different roles, different pay bands, different seniority ladder they'd be starting near the bottom of at 48. Meanwhile, the effects nobody puts in a press release ripple outward. The lunch counter that fed that tower loses a third of its regulars. The parking garage empties out. The dry cleaner that survived on office workers quietly closes. Whether the replacement tenant brings the same foot traffic is a real question, and the honest answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no, and nobody knows until it's already happened. The scoreboard says 1 out, 1 in. The block feels something much less tidy than that. Alright, let me push back on my own argument because I don't want to hand you a story that's cleaner than reality. The strongest counter to everything I just said is this: Chicago is still enormous. It still has one of the largest concentrations of major company headquarters in America, a handful of high-profile exits spread over several years. Out of a corporate base that size is not a collapse. It's attrition, and attrition is normal. Companies have always moved. They moved into Chicago for a century, which is the only reason there was so much here to lose. Second, individual departures usually have individual reasons that have nothing to do with the politics people attach to them. Boeing wanted proximity to Washington. Caterpillar's move followed a broader manufacturing shift. True Value's exit was an acquisition consolidation. The buyer was based in Indiana. Reading a single grand political message into each of those is a stretch, and anyone who does it is telling you a story, not analyzing data. Third, the arrivals are not fake. Dover and GE Healthcare are serious companies making serious commitments. Dismissing the inbound column because it doesn't fit a decline narrative is exactly the same sin as ignoring the outbound column. Those are all fair, and I'd rather be accurate than dramatic. But here's what survives the pushback. Attrition is normal. Losing your most valuable pieces specifically is not. Individual reasons are real, but when the individual reasons keep producing the same direction, the pattern is still information. And the inbound companies being real doesn't change the fact that they tend to be lighter than the ones going out. Chicago isn't dying. It's being swapped out piece by piece for slightly lighter pieces. That's slower and less dramatic than collapse. It's also harder to notice until it's finished. So let's put the two facts back together. Chicago lost Boeing, Caterpillar, Citadel, Tyson, and now True Value. Chicago also gained Dover, GE Healthcare, Nautilus, and a top-of-the-list ranking for headquarters relocations. Both true, both real. Neither one is the story. The story is the trade. The city is exporting weight and importing volume, and a place can do that for a long time while its headline numbers look completely fine, right up until it realizes it's no longer the obvious answer to where should we put this? Here's what I'd actually watch if you want to know which way this goes. Forget the count of relocations. Watch the size of the next one that leaves and the size of the next one that arrives. That ratio is the real health metric, and nobody puts it on a chart because it's uncomfortable for everyone. The boosters don't want to weigh what's leaving. The doomers don't want to weigh what's coming in. You now know to weigh both.